What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Beyond the Model for NFL DFS picks, GPP strategy, lineup advice for FanDuel and DraftKings, Yahoo, season-long league. As many filler words as I can say in the first 30 seconds, so YouTube may recommend you this show. What's going on, everybody? I am Moose. I am at CFB_Moose on Twitter/X is where you can find me. Co-founder and data guru here at OccupyFantasy.com. Alongside Brian at Brian Jester FF on Twitter/X. He is the co-founder and CEO of OccupyFantasy.com. Brian, how's it going?
The most veteran move there, jamming in all those keywords. And I am currently watching Maryland not get blown out by Ohio State, which has already surpassed my expectations for this game.
There we go. Yeah, I saw the spread. You know, they're I think they're 5-0, and don't follow college as much as I need to. But yeah, I saw that and I said that's a large spread. I think they'll get it. So threw some money down on Maryland spread, and let's hope they cover so we can be part of the good old sickos committee. But not here to talk about college football. Here to talk about some NFL. This is the Beyond the Model show. If you're here, you want to say hi, say hello. If you're first time here, you can do that too, or don't. It's whatever. But basically, we're here for about 30 minutes answering your questions, taking beyond the model, which what that means is we're talking about some stacks that we like, some stuff that might not necessarily pop in the Occupy model. Just kind of chit chat along the way. You ready to start, Brian?
Let's do it. I feel like we've had good grasp on these slates the first 4 weeks, even with some of the limited information. And with the smaller slate this time around, you and I have been back and forth on whether this is actually a good slate or a bad slate. I think I'm on the good side. I personally feel more comfortable when there are less games. So with just 10 games, our model's identified a couple clear spots. So yeah, I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, and I'm actually, I think, on the opposite side. I've been going back and forth saying, is this good? Is this bad? I keep coming back to it's pretty bad. And each week, for the first 4 weeks, I've been upping my allocation. I actually think I'm going to be decreasing my allocation a little bit. I just don't have the full grasp or what I want to do. So I might just take a step back, not necessarily MME it, maybe just really do well and build just a handful of small lineups and hammer those away in different contest types. I think, Brian, this is definitely a slate where you have to be very picky with your contests.
Yeah, you're smarter than all of us. I know most of us will not do that. So big ups to you for actually being able to do that. And shout out to the other Brian, perhaps the more profitable Brian so far this season, Brian Lee, longtime member of Occupy. So for those of you who don't know, if you're a member of OccupyFantasy.com, we do a free members league every week. It's on DraftKings. It's free to enter. It's a free roll. But every week, the winner gets a $100 GPP ticket to the Spy the following week. Brian has won it 2 of the 4 weeks so far. He said he's going for 3 out of 5. So that would be an Occupy record for sure. And either way, that would be a great start to a season.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, it just shows the hard work that Brian puts in. Absolutely. Yep. And yeah, so excuse me. Let's take a look here. Brian, we normally just chit chat about some different stacks. Normally I go first. I've gone for first the first 4 weeks, but since you say you like the slate a little bit more than I do, I'm going to let you go first.
All right. Well, this is the time where people turn off the stream immediately because my favorite stack of the entire week is my top tier stack. And there are a couple of reasons I do like it in addition to some of the metrics. It's Tennessee and Indy. So first time these teams are matching up, generally we try to avoid the second divisional matchups. This is just the first time they've met this season. But a lot of reasons to like this game. So if we're looking at the model, a couple guys obviously pop. We have 2 underperforming wide receivers in this game, DeAndre Hopkins, Michael Pittman. DeAndre Hopkins would have been excluded from the list had he completed, it wasn't his fault, it was a little bit overthrown, the flea flicker last week when he was an underperforming wide receiver again. But either way, 2 guys who are getting high target shares in their offense. No more Treylon Burks. He's out again this week, so just more condensed target shares for Tennessee. Tennessee and Indy are both getting back some offensive line depth. Ryan Kelly, their starting center, one of the best centers in the league, he is back for Indy. Tennessee is getting one of their offensive linemen back as well. And it's one of the cheaper stacks, thankfully. So Tannehill plus Hopkins, super cheap. Anthony Richardson, you can pair him, play him by himself. We talked about this last week. And actually worked really well. You and I both said last week you could play a 1-2 stack. You play Anthony Richardson and you play Kyron Williams and Puka last week, and you probably would have cleaned up had you have played that. I was not smart enough to play that, but that was a great stack. And you can do the same thing this week with maybe D Hop and Derrick Henry or whoever else. But it is a very cheap stack, and I think there's a path to a big ceiling here at a cheap price. Because on DraftKings specifically, Moose, this is something we'll highlight here. Pricing's pretty tough when you try to stack some of these other games.
It is. It's terrible. It's very tough to do. The one thing that caught my eye about this game, Brian, is the running back situation for Indy. I mean, normally the last 3 weeks, Zach Moss has been basically number 1 or number 2 in the running back model here. And both him and Jonathan Taylor, who Colts just completely overpaid for, are nowhere even near the top. Derrick Henry on the other side is, I think, top 6 or 6 or so. So it means I don't like that. You have a split backfield. They already said Taylor's going to be on snap count. That's going to be really iffy. So I think if you're playing this, I think you have to stay away from those people. And then, I can see you do like the 1-2 stack that you talked about. There's a handful of ways to do that, and it opens up a lot more salary. So you can play some of these other studs as well.
Yeah, and we have a huge list of underperforming wide receivers. So when you play a stack with a rushing quarterback like Richardson, and you don't have to force in a pass catcher, it just gives you more opportunity to play those guys. And like you said, there's a couple situations like this, but with JT and Moss specifically, that's a backfield you can just completely scratch out. That's one of 20 backfields on this main slate you can just X out. They're going to cannibalize each other. I said there are a couple other spots on the slate like that. But I love seeing those types of spots because we know we can just cross them out. If one of them ceilings, it's going to be at low ownership probably, and the path to ceilinging is pretty thin. So either way, it's a stack that I do like, and I will say, we'll know by 4 p.m. Eastern, but watch out for Kyle Phillips, who actually was one of the historical NFL leaders in target share in his first ever rookie game. This was last year. So with Treylon Burks out, Kyle Phillips, who missed the first 4 games, on IR. He is expected to be activated. He practiced all week. He's $3K, super cheap option if you want to pair it with Tannehill, if you expect that to be a passing game on their side.
That makes sense to me, yeah. Absolutely dig that. Yeah, it seems, Brian, a lot of stuff's going to be figured out around 4 p.m. Tonight. Yeah. There's a lot of questionables, a lot of doubtful, a lot of just injury designations. We're going to have to figure that out. So, Brian, the one stack for me that popped off. Actually, I realized we shouted out Brian. We never actually answered his question, though.
We can't give him any more information. He's already too good. We can't give him any more information.
Yeah, so now we got to basically give him which one's going to be the worst. But he said for basically for the Occupy contest, small field, high risk, Tua, Mahomes, or Hurts. And that kind of leads into my next stack is that Kansas City, Minnesota game. So I'm leaning Mahomes. What would you say, Brian?
Yeah, I think either Mahomes or Tua is probably the best bet of that group. Hurts, especially on DraftKings. Yeah, if you just play him naked, that's fine. But trying to pair him with any of his receivers gets a little bit prohibitive, especially if you're trying to stack that game. But yeah, I think Mahomes. So let's talk about the Kansas City stack really quickly, Moose. Rashee Rice is popping in our model and popping in a lot of our top lineups when you run the builder, and it makes sense. His snap count and his target share is increasing. He leads the league, or is top 3 in the league, in targets per route run. Granted, small sample, but it's very clear that they don't have an alpha receiver out there, and he's starting to look more and more like the guy. Mm-hmm. I would, like we said in the showdown video with the Giants game, while it didn't materialize, teams that look to need a spark on offense will start to play these rookie wide receivers, and I would love to be ahead of them before they actually do it and the field catches on and they're at high ownership. So there's a great spot for Rashee Rice in that sort of sentiment, and obviously compare him with Kelsey too.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're forgetting something else that's pretty big, Brian, is the fact that I just mentioned it. There's a lot of shit that's going to happen at 4 o'clock. So many teams have injuries. Everything's going on. There's just nothing for this game. There's no major injuries. Yeah. No one's really questionable.
Yeah, that's true.
At the end of the day, we know they're both teams are high-powered offenses. There are no downgrades, no upgrades, no nothing. They're just going to go out and play. And I know that sounds very fish of me to say, play the offenses without injuries, and that's the only game for this entire slate that doesn't have injuries. So
it's pretty crazy. For being week 5. Yeah, that's a really good point, Moose. What about the Cousins side? Obviously, we got to like the condensed target share there. But again, now that we're into week 5 and there are only 10 games on the slate, this is when we start to implement the Curtis Samuel theory a bit more. For those who have been around Occupy, you know that if you have read our strategy guide. If not, it's free on the website. I think it's linked in the description below to a free strategy guide. We talk about the Curtis Samuel theory. When pricing gets tighter, at this part of the season. Once we get less and less games, we add correlation by adding a cheap game stack piece. It was I won 250K with Curtis Samuel doing that. That's why it's called the Curtis Samuel theory. But you have guys like Osborne, Jordan Addison, Rashee Rice, Kyle Phillips, like these guys that we've been talking about, these cheaper guys and game stacks that can help you fit in the studs and add correlation to your lineup.
I mean, yeah, because think about it this way, right? And we also talk about sometimes the Curtis Samuel piece has to be the bring back as well. So like if you are, game stacking this game, let's say you go Cousins, Jefferson, you're already at like $40,000, but because it's expensive they are. You bring him back with Rashee Rice. Brian, what wide receiver around 3,600 are you going to play? I mean, there's a handful, but you get that just extra smidge of correlation that helps you out. That's going to beat him out of anyone else. I mean, let me pull up the model here. Is there even anyone else remotely close to his price that is even worth?
I think
playing?
Rashee Rice ranks the highest of the sub 4K guys, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's him, and pretty much the same with Calvin Austin because he's an underperforming wide receiver. But yeah, basically you get a sub 4K guy as a part of a stack who's actually decent. So if anything, if I'm stacking, that's the way I would go. I would probably stack the Cousins side, not so much the Mahomes side.
I think it's very fair. And that spread is a little bit tighter than I might have imagined. I imagine that has to do with how Kansas State looks so awful on Sunday Night Football. But with I don't think T Swift's going to travel up to Minnesota, so maybe they'll play a little more free this week.
Yeah, maybe we won't have to see her after every catch.
It's God, dude, crazy.
Yeah. So we each talked about our favorite stacks, our top stacks. Brian, what's going to be one of your next stacks that you want to talk about?
Maybe this is why you think it's a bad week, and maybe it's why I should probably lean that way. Actually, my number 2 stack, when you factor in price, is Arizona and Cincinnati.
Damn Cincinnati, you took mine. Damn it, you took mine.
Okay. Here's the thing, because I have these two stacks similarly ranked, but I give the edge to Arizona and Cincinnati because of the price. So I'll talk about the other stack that I have equally ranked, and I'll give you the Arizona Cincinnati stack. Okay. The one I have is the Rams and the Eagles. This is different on FanDuel versus DraftKings. FanDuel, you can fit in Hurts lineups a lot easier if you want to stack them with AJ Brown or Devonta Smith. It's not as easy on DraftKings, especially if you run a bring back from LA side. But I think what we have to talk about here, Moose, is the Rams receiver situation. Puka Nacua, literally unprecedented 4-week stretch to start his career. And now they bring back Cooper Kupp, one of the most target hog receivers we've seen in our lifetimes. However, they're both priced as if they're the number 1 wide receiver. Right, and Nacua has not seen a price decrease. I think it's even increased, and it comes back to basically his old price, maybe a little bit cheaper. But at their prices, their roles do not match their price. So how do you think we should handle it if we do decide to sack this game?
So yeah, this was actually a question in the Discord. Someone asked me my thoughts on this game. I don't have this stack ranked. I would not advise people to play this stack. I think it's terrible. I spent about an hour before the show trying to run as many possible builds as possible with this type of group. 2x something, 3x something, 3x1, 3 whatever, Puka. You have to think about it. The wide receiver group is going to be so cannibalized. You don't know what's going to happen. If you just pick one, let's say you just run the builder, 300 lineups, lock in Kupp, or you lock in Puka. It's not building. And primarily because you have Kyren Williams, who's just he's still on the field. He hasn't left yet since week 1. Number 1 wide receiver, running back in our model, just absolutely crushes week in and week out. He's less than both of them. So, I mean, would you want someone who's basically zero cannibalization, less price, higher upside than both Kupp or Puka? And if you run it to 300, you're not getting 300 lineups. But here's just some people that are showing up over 10% of your lineups if you run that. Chase Brown, Eric Gray, Dalton Schultz, Cordell Patterson, Patrick Ricard. If you try and do a 2x,
so if you run no rules,
yeah, right. And so it's basically saying you need to make some shitty ass lineups if you're trying to stack this game. So doing that, it made me really think. I don't like this game. If you want to do a one-off, maybe, but still, you're taking such a high-risk chance that are you willing to spend, oh my goodness, however much, $8,000-$9,000 on a wide receiver that could be cannibalized, and get rid of their target share? I don't see that. And if you try and force them in, the lineups get even worse.
It's tough, man. It's really tough. So maybe the best way is just to mini stack this game instead of fully stacking it, because we talked about playing some cheaper stacks to fit in studs. This could work, but I agree. Like, I don't know what the most likely scenario is. That's the problem, right? What is the most likely outcome? Is it Cup just comes back and dominates and Puka's relegated to second fiddle? Do they ease Cup in? Is Cup's hamstring fully healthy? It sounds like he's fully practiced all week. I don't think they would rush him back if he wasn't. But Stafford's developed this connection with Nakua. Do they just run it through Kyren Williams? Or, like you said, is the most likely outcome they're 1A, 1B, and they're both priced a little bit too highly for our liking? I think that's probably the most likely outcome. So it's really interesting to think about. And on the Eagles side, we have A.J. Brown, who's overperforming now. It's just, I guess the best thing I would probably do, I like the running backs in this game, Swift and Kyren. So maybe just play it that way. So this is a really long-winded way of saying and agreeing with what you said. That it is a tough game to fit in. And if you're building 150, maybe you can build certain narratives around who gets what.
Yeah.
But you're playing smaller field, man. It's really tough.
Yeah, I mean, you literally Williams and Swift are number 1 and number 2 in our running back model, which has been absolutely on fire this season. And from a wide receiver standpoint, Kupp is top 5, but a lot of that has to do with what he can do. And Puka,
it's big leap of faith, right?
Yeah, big leap of faith. So, yeah, I agree. If you're mass multi-entering, absolutely, you can say, hey, I'm going to, my 20% of lineups, I'm going to make Ram stacks or Philly stacks with this story, this story or that story. And that's a way you could play it. Brian, do you think you could just do a Kyren Swift mini stack and just say, let's hope they both go off that way?
I think you could. They both play in the passing game, especially Kyren. No, I think that makes a ton of sense, right? There's not negative correlation in playing that. So I do like it. I think it's great.
Definitely. Dot Bets here has a question. So sorry if this was already discussed. What's the feeling around JT this week? I figured they ease him in after contract talks, plus a tough matchup makes an easy fade. I mentioned that I'm not really touching that running back situation. Did you mention anything? I don't remember, Brian.
Thanks for listening. We actually did touch on that. Dot Bets, we're fading that situation completely. It was near the top of the show if you want to listen back on the replay afterwards.
Yeah. Cool. So I love how you're like, my second favorite stack is something I don't like. So
it's just, it checks a lot of boxes, but when you try to build, it's just not. And we're gonna say, I think Chris has in the chat, fading 2 of the top quarterbacks in the model. It's just individualized rankings versus actual in action utilizing it. It's a really different beast. So we'll see. Maybe some overnight news changes the ability to fit these teams in. But for now, I do prefer that Arizona and Cincinnati stack. Moose, I know you've been on the Dobbs train for as long as he's been running it. So talk to me about this stack.
Yeah, I had to bring the hat out. It's not because my hair is messed up. I forgot to style it before the show, but I had to bring out the Cincinnati hat, watch all their media reports. Brian, it reminds me of a time, I can't remember if it was someone else that you mentioned about it, where following very niche sports, right? And I know the NFL is one of the biggest sports in North America, but following Cincinnati, pretty much watching every media report, following everything. One of the big things we talk about on this one is the T. Higgins injury, and Kwame Lassiter was elevated to the active roster. I imagine that means T. Higgins is probably going to be out. If he is, I absolutely love this stack. You pair up Burrow, or I think you could even go like a 2-2 stack on this, right? You play Burrow or Dobbs, Chase, Boyd, who's underperforming, even better boost for him if Higgins out. Zach Ertz, $3,500 for filling the tight end spot. Leaves you with, I don't know, like 6,000, 7,000 spots for your other position players. Huge way to go around there. What's his name? Wuzie is probably going to be out for Cincinnati. That boosts to the passing offense for Arizona. Again, cheap and injuries for defense. I think this is a really good way to go. Just by building it, you get to really fit in a lot of different ways, and you're not really hampered by salary on this.
No, I know a lot of lineups that you've been successful with so far have been not only just with Dobbs stacks, but these types of stacks. And it's nice because we have clear targets on both sides. Marquise Brown, Michael Wilson, the rookie, Zach Ertz, the tight end, James Conner dominating touches in the backfield. Cincinnati side, Mixon dominating touches in their backfield. Chase and now Boyd, assuming Higgins is out. Because like you said, they only have 5 active receivers on the roster. If Higgins is out, that would leave them with 4. They would not do that, so that's why they activated Lassiter. I agree, Higgins is probably out, just reading between the lines there. Yeah. So just a massive, massive boost for Tyler Boyd, who, like you said, is already underperforming. This is a fantastic stack. And I think Burrow, as mentioned, he's feeling the best he's felt so far with the calf injury. How much we can trust that, I don't know, but I think we have to take him for his word. He's been pretty honest so far. So, yeah, this is crazy. But yeah, I do think it's one of the better stacks of the week.
Yes, there we go. That means they're absolutely dropping a deuce egg. So, no, I mean, again, you mentioned that he's starting to feel better. Every week he's been saying he's been feeling better and better. And you can feel, I don't know if you've actually watched it, but he sounds more optimistic in the way that he's saying it. Like more excited, like he's like actually excited to get back out there and play. So good there. Also, I think if you're reading between the lines, you need something else. I know Chase was upset that he was open. Zach Taylor brought him in the office, said, "I get it, man." And Chase said that was actually the first time he heard Zach Taylor cuss in a positive way. And when you get your coach fired up like that, you get your team fired up. I see a big spike week for Cincinnati here.
I think so too. I think this could be the week against a team that surprised a lot of people. But I mean, and Chase isn't going to sneak up on anyone. 22% projected ownership on DraftKings. Tyler Boyd, we have under 10%. Maybe that creeps over 10% once Higgins is officially rolled out. So it won't be shocking and catch anyone off guard. But I don't think people are going to fully stack it. So, but maybe they are though. Marquise Brown, 18% projected ownership. What's Rondale? Rondale, 3%. And Michael Wilson, we have at 4%. So I think it's one of those spots where individually the guys are a little bit underpriced and people are going to play them, but they won't fully stack the game and play their quarterbacks because we know that looking at quarterback projected ownership, Burrow actually up there 10%, and then we have Joshua Dobbs at 5%. So the Arizona side is definitely the sneakier side.
Absolutely, 100% agree with that. Hawk Dark says also Jets is a gross stack. Yeah, I mean that's if you're playing the Jet stack, just reevaluate your life.
I know, man. I get it. Denver's been literally the worst defense in NFL history. But as I wrote in my notes here, they're getting 3 defensive players back. And my notes verbatim say that can't possibly make them any worse. So they get 3 defensive players back. They're going to be a little bit better. I don't know, man. It's 2 bad teams playing each other. Maybe it turns into a shootout. I know a lot of people are optimistic about Zach Wilson, his performance Sunday night. But we'll see. This could be a game where both teams are able to just beat each other on the ground, and the stack itself doesn't end up being that great of a stack.
Speaking of that stack, Chris and I were talking about it right before the show. With Javonte questionable, does that change anything at all? I mean, they have him and I were talking about it. Was it Jaleel would be the backup. He's pretty cheap. I think he's how cheap is he? Like 36? I could be completely wrong. 5,000. 5,000. Yeah. So 5,000. I was looking at someone else. 36. 5K. Does that make a dent at all? Does that help any way whatsoever, or it's kind of not really at the moment?
I think it helps a bit. I mean, this coaching staff. I mean, they're just grasping at straws, trying to find something that works. They were literally talking about playing Jaleel McLaughlin over Javonte Williams. It's like I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Like Jaleel is just impressing everyone. Apparently, obviously had the touchdown last week and looked pretty decent doing it. But to play him over Javonte Williams, I don't know. I don't think they're going to have to make that decision because if you listen to Javonte Williams, he said he's 50-50 to play. It's up to the medical staff. He said if I'm not out there Sunday, I'll for sure be out there Thursday on the short week. I mean, why would you say that if you're just going to be out there Sunday, right? So it sounds like he's going to be out and then return on Thursday. So I agree. McLaughlin will probably see his ownership rise from the 3% projected we have it now once Javonte is ruled out, but is a salary saver that we could use. But this is a good topic to stay on this because Jaleel's a guy that I got a lot of when I was running my practice builds before the show. The other one that the model likes that is the only sub 10% running back in the top 12 or so for us is Dameon Pierce.
Yeah.
I think he's ranked top 8. I got a ton of him when trying to get leverage in my 150 and my 300 lineups that I was building. And Houston's offensive line is actually getting healthier. They were playing with dudes off the street and somehow just succeeding for 4 weeks. Just the greatest coaching performance I've ever seen. Yeah. Now they're actually getting getting one of their offensive linemen back and potentially Laramie Tunsil back, really showing up their O-line. And Pierce actually played the highest percentage of snaps he's played in this season last week. So trending up a little bit that way. Could be a good game script against Atlanta. Pierce is a guy I like a lot this week, and while everyone is rightfully playing some of these other guys, Pierce helps save salary and will go completely overlooked.
Yeah, I agree, and there's a reason why he's at the top of the model. Yeah, you pretty much hit everything. I couldn't really add anything else. Brian, I know we're kind of pressed for time. It's not our usual time slot. I do want to just run really quick through a couple of stacks that I like. Bullet points here or there. If there's any other stacks you like, we'll point them out. One that didn't rank high in the statistics for me, but when you dig deep, I really like that New Orleans side of the New Orleans-New England game. Literally everyone is underperforming wide receiver. They're cheap. Shaheed at 3,800, one of my favorite sub 4K plays. If that stack, get your Curtis Samuel piece. Was there another one that I had here? Detroit, Carolina. I think yours in that as well. But that's the only other stacks that I have. I think I'll let you talk about the Detroit one, and if there's any other stacks you want to talk about as well.
On the New Orleans side, I think they're all underperforming because Carr was so horrific last week.
Yeah.
And if his shoulder is a little bit healthier, we have to like that a little bit. Plus, New England is missing Matthew Judon, Christian Gonzalez, two of their best defensive players. So a little bit of bump there. The total was like 24 or something outrageously low. So Vegas is not super high on this game, but just maybe something to mix in. Mm-hmm. Carolina, Detroit, with Amon-Ra St. Brown officially doubtful, that really lowers the floor and ceiling of that entire offense. It does give us some cheap options in Khalif Raymond, Josh Reynolds to get some access there. Not a game I'm fully expecting to stack. The other one we haven't really touched on is Miami and New York. Let's talk about it really quickly. Miami 13-point favorites. Tua, there's another stack that's expensive to fit. Tua and Tyreek especially. What's interesting to me, just looking at DraftKings ownership, you look at Tyreek and you look at Devon Achane, both over 20% projected ownership. You look at their counterparts who are going to see equal playing time, maybe not equal volume, but Raheem Mostert and Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle still was a second-round pick. Let's not forget this in season-long leagues before the season started. Both those guys are under 7%. So if you're looking to play that game, you're looking for just some natural, easy leverage at cheaper prices than Waddle and or Mostert paired up with Tua. You don't have to bring it back as 13-point favorites, as we've seen the Giants' offense fucking enough so far this year. Everyone knows how bad they are. Wandale, I get it. Maybe one of the other receivers, but and maybe Waller. He's a guy, like you said, Chase Moose complaining to the coach. They said they got to get him the ball more. We'll see if it works out. But I think a Miami onslaught's a good play.
Yeah, Achane, whatever he's going to go by this week again, because he changes his name every week. Third in our model, 22%. Seems like the field's called on that he's just going to score 2 touchdowns every week, at least. I'm fading him. I mean, if I'm playing that stack, I'm going another way. I'm not sure what you think. What do you think?
So you don't think he's going to average 10 yards per carry and score every 4 touches?
Exactly.
We'll call those.
Mr. Taurine here says Robinson or Kamara in DK single entry 3-backs.
Who is Robinson?
Is it Bijan Robinson probably?
Oh yeah, probably Bijan. I wasn't even thinking about Bijan this week, to be honest. So I guess Kamara does rank higher for us. Kamara is 6,300. Bijan is, I can find him in the model. Bijan is 77. Yeah, so Kamara ranks higher and is cheaper, so I'll go Kamara.
Makes sense for me. And then last, before we get out of here, Brian, we do our wide receiver call. We might have gotten a cease and desist, so we're not going to call it what we called it last week. So what that means is, so it's 5K or less, is it under 10%, under 5%?
We'll go under 10% because it is a smaller slate, so we'll go under 10%.
Yep. So so DraftKings salary 5K or less, 10% or less projected ownership on DraftKings. Brian, my pick. I talked about the stack. I gotta go Shaheed, absolute long ball genius. He just needs one catch for 60 yards for a touchdown. That's him. That's my pick.
All right, that's an easy pick. For the generic fast food wide receiver play of the week, I will go with. We talked about Rashee Rice. He's just pushing 10%, so maybe that's a little bit cheating. Tyler Boyd, I think, will end up over 10%. Mac Hollins,
Ooh.
3,300 on DraftKings. Officially underperforming, which again, everyone in the offense is underperforming with Desmond Ridder under center. But 3,300 has been getting some deep balls. Should be a competitive game against Houston. I'll go Mac Hollins, who not really thrilled to play, but for the generic fast food play of the week. What about the other generic fast food play of the week? The guy who is a little bit higher owned. You probably have to go out of your way to play him, but we don't like playing him.
I actually have. I mean, that has to be Cup, right?
Yeah, I guess so. That I think Cup and maybe even Puka. But yeah, I think Cup is the embodiment of this version of the generic fast food play of the week.
Absolutely. So before I take us out of here, Brian, any last thoughts or words you want to talk about?
So Chris put out his video last night with the actual good plays, so make sure you go watch that. It's here on YouTube. He posted it last night. The daily plug is up, occupyfantasy.com. Once again, actual good plays, pivots, lineup construction tips, overall slate notes, stacks to target. Chris does it all, so make sure you go read that. Link is in the description below. Our Occupy model is up and running. Projected ownership will probably update 1 to 2 more times after we get these 4 p.m. Transactions and injury news. The lineup builder up and running. We already have projected ownership up for the London game. The projected ownership for the Sunday night football game will be up later this evening. I think that's it for football. And then the next video you'll see will be me on Monday breaking down the Monday night football slate.
Yep, that's pretty much hits it. UFC starts in about a couple hours or so. And so go read the plug, occupyfantasy.com for that as well. Jake does an excellent article over there. But until next time, Wilson Brian from Occupy Fantasy. Have a good day.